Yo, what is up guys? Delboy here, aka Blue Collar Sports TV. Hopefully you guys are doing well. If you're new here, smash that like, hit subscribe, all of that good stuff. So, I guess this video is a little bit different. Not really that different because I'll be moaning, which is pretty much par of a course for this channel, especially in recent times with boxing looking how it's looking. But you know, I've been kind of racking my brains, thinking about like the content side of boxing, covering fights, covering topics in boxing, etc. And you know, for the longest time I've kind of been in and out with it. Sometimes I'll want to make videos, sometimes I won't. I won't force it if I don't, but I was kind of thinking, what happened to my drive in regards to covering boxing and talking about boxing, because it's very inconsistent, and it has been for the longest time now. Like I said, I don't think the schedule helps, but there's definitely more to it than that. And I think one of the main factors to why I've kind of like lost that edge, or lost that kind of desire to continuously make boxing content, or like consistently make boxing content, is like boxing media fatigue. And not only that, I don't really like where the quote-unquote Ytbc has gone in recent years. When I first started watching boxing content, way before I started uploading, it was pretty underground, I would say. The scene was pretty underground. Primarily, it was people talking about fights, predicting fights. Sometimes there would be historical content. You know, people would be like... There was still like the fanboying for certain fighters and things of that nature. But several years ago, the Ytbc, the YouTube boxing scene, felt far more organic. It felt far more by the creator, by individuals. Whereas now, I feel like the corporatization of boxing media has started to have a trickle-down effect in regards to regular quote-unquote boxing uploaders. I feel like everybody now is trying to get their foot in the door to work for a corporation, a promotional company, a network. Maybe they worry about sponsorships and things of that nature. And it's resulted, in my opinion, in a very sterile Ytbc. Like I feel like there's very few individuals who cover boxing. You know, there's very few individuals who talk about boxing on here like how they would down the pub if they're talking about a fight, or with their friends, you know. I thought what we were trying to get away from was like the corporatization of punditry in boxing. But that's all I see now on the Ytbc. It's very corporate, it's very safe. There's no real out there opinions, questioning the legitimacy of fights, questioning the legitimacy of power brokers in boxing, namely Turki Al-Sheikh. I think the Turki Al-Sheikh factor has been pretty big in shifting the type of content that we see within the Ytbc. I think there's a lot of people out there who have like moderate followings who are terrified to criticize that guy. They are terrified to criticize that guy just in case of future potential opportunities. Even though they may see things that are blatantly wrong or blatantly suspicious, they won't voice these concerns because of possible future financial gain. And I understand how YouTube works to a degree. I've been doing it for a long time. My other channel is moderately successful. I had a real boom period when I first started that channel, and I left tens of thousands of dollars on the table because I didn't want to do sponsorships, or more so that the sponsorships that were offered weren't for me. They were products I didn't believe in. And also I worried about how it would affect the direction of my channel. Ultimately, YouTube for me has always been for me to spout off on what I want to talk about, which has mainly been boxing, but on the other channel, true crime, drug cartels, things of that nature. And I guess you judge people by how you judge yourself. And all I see is a whole bunch of people toning themselves down, not injecting any real personality into what they do, being scared to share their true opinion on boxing matters, and mainly lying by omission as well in many cases. All for a potential, like I said, gig with a promoter, a network. And is this what content creation's become? Again, I thought it was the alternative to the mainstream media. I thought it was the middle finger to the mainstream media. But ultimately it's become a passageway, a pathway to get into the mainstream media, certainly on the boxing side. And I've seen the same happen as well in the true crime community. It's just become a big old rat race. It's just become a big old rat race. And those hidden gem channels are even more hard to find now because of how the algorithm has progressed in recent years. Ultimately, we're served up with a whole lot of slop and very little informative content. When was the last time you learned anything from Kugan Cassius, for example? When was the last time he asked a pertinent, difficult question to a promoter, to a fighter, to a power broker in boxing? Again, just look at his affiliates back in the day. Tied up with MTK, thinking he was some sort of gangster. You know, more than happy to have his channel sponsored by drug money, which is what it was. And you expect that guy to ask any pertinent questions or have any integrity. Of course he's not going to. Of course he's not going to. We don't really have guys like Thomas Hauser anymore within the boxing media. A guy who would write articles and it would piss the right people off. A guy who would ask very real questions in relation to very powerful people in boxing. Floyd Mayweather, for example, and the questionable drug tests he had in his career. Where are these guys anymore? There's none of these guys in mainstream or print journalism within boxing. Maybe I'm being harsh, but I don't see them. And the Ytbc is just becoming a rat race. It's just becoming a big old rat race. Where I feel like the majority of channels either, like I said, they try to format their content to essentially get a job within boxing media, like mainstream boxing media, or within a boxing promotional company. Alternatively, they will just play the game of fanboying for either a certain promoter or a certain group of fighters to basically eat off those fighters' fan bases. They may not believe what they're peddling. They may ignore blatant signs of corruption or things of that nature just to, again, push a narrative to eat off a certain fan base. And it feels like not everybody, but it feels like a whole load of channels on the Ytbc are essentially strategizing not to build their channels in an organic way, but they're strategizing in a way in which they will play certain angles. But again, it doesn't result in the betterment of boxing. It doesn't result in us forming some sort of movement of creators and the viewers who can actually force change in boxing, or at least apply a little bit of pressure, you know? And the way the Ytbc is now, I feel like there's a lot of channels who essentially, you know, they won't push the boat out, they won't rock the boat, they won't rattle the cage, and all they really are, in my opinion, are gatekeepers to the power brokers' narratives within boxing. You know, because the people who do ask questions, because the scene now is so lukewarm, milquetoast, and sterile, anybody who asks questions or notices certain things, you know, we're just going to get labelled as conspiracy theorists, haters, this, that, and the third. Whereas back in the day, you know, these dissenting voices or alternative voices were way more prevalent on the Ytbc. Even the fanboying back then was more organic. It wasn't really to build fan bases as such. It was just because a certain creator liked a certain fighter, they would ride with that fighter. But it wasn't to really build fan bases, it was just how that individual creator was. But now people strategize so fucking much. I think it's killed the enjoyment, for me at least, as a viewer. I'm talking as a viewer now. As a viewer, it's really killed my enjoyment of the Ytbc. I barely watch anybody. I watch 3 or 4 channels and that's about it. And I comment on those videos now and then so they know who they are. So yeah, boxing media fatigue for me is a big part of why I've not been, I guess, motivated. I don't like that word, but I do use it in this instance. It's why I haven't been motivated to make boxing content, because I feel like the scene is dead or very much dying. It's just about clinging on to life, maybe. And it's a shame, because back in the day, like I said, there was just there was a lot more variety back in the day in regards to creators. And like I said, overall, it just felt a little bit more organic. And it's a shame the way the scene's gone. But I guess as a scene gets bigger, as it becomes less niche and less underground, I guess this happens with every sort of corner of the internet to a degree. And I know this video is a little self-aggrandizing. I get it. But, at the same time, I do have a track record, which I can show the receipts for. This whole thing for me has always been a hobby. It's never been about money. Whatever you earn on the side is a bonus. And, I have the receipts for that, so I think I can be a little bit self-aggrandizing in this instance. You can't get your dick sucked all the time. Sometimes you just gotta wank yourself off, right? But yeah, I do apologise for the self-aggrandizing. But, it's just something that I wanted to get off my chest, It's something that I wanted to get off my chest. The older heads out there, people who have been around for a while, who remember the old days, what do you guys think? Do you guys notice the same as me? Am I tripping? And by the way, one last thing. When I criticise the Ytbc and the way it's going, I will say, you guys may put two and two together and think of channels that I may be talking about or may be alluding to. It's more so the scene in general, but I will say there are very successful channels out there, and although I don't like their content, I don't like the energy behind it, I will say, a lot of these guys are very talented in regards to video editing, things of that nature. They put their content together really well from a technical standpoint, so the level of talent has risen within this scene. I'm a terrible video editor, really, really bad, and I don't edit videos on this channel. But despite the level of talent rising, I think the level of individuals has decreased. The level of just spirit put into videos or just heart put into videos has drastically decreased, which I think is, kind of sucky, but it is what it is. Anyway, share your thoughts below, Beanie Guy Delboy. Peace.